good thing you don't need elbows to come home empty-handed. What could be worse than coming home without a deal? How about promising Donald Trump that you'll send $1 trillion of Canadian investments into the United States? I know it's hard to believe, but watch this clip.
We are the largest foreign investor in the United States. $500 billion in the last 5 years alone, probably $8 trillion in the next 5 years if we get the agreement that we expect to get.
$1 trillion of our money? Marc Carney is promising to send $1 trillion Canadian dollars into the United States to build factories, sawmills, auto plants there instead of here at home. Now, what's his defense? His defense is that it's going to be private sector money, not better, going to provide an incentive to Canadians who invest in the US with either tax breaks or some other reward, or he's going to create the conditions here that actually drives out that investment. So for example, he's keeping the production cap, the industrial carbon tax, the shipping ban, and all of Trudeau's tax hikes, basically saying to Canadian investors, you can't make a profit here, so put your money to work in the United States. Carney has failed to protect Canada's auto sector. Already, production shifts are moving to the United States. Already, the big three automakers are making investment decisions, and they are not choosing Canada because of Marc Carney's failure to do what he promised and to get a deal that protects Canadian auto workers. Meanwhile, there have already been devastating job losses in the lumber sector as punishing U.S. softwood lumber duties continue to hammer Canadian workers. Remember, the previous Conservative government was successful in negotiating a softwood lumber deal with both Republican and Democratic presidents.
We now know why the U.S. president wanted this prime minister in power so badly. A weak leader whose high taxes and anti-development laws are sending billions of dollars and thousands of jobs out of this country. 86,000 jobs lost. And yesterday, the prime minister promised the president that he would increase Canadian investment in the U.S. by $1 trillion if he gets the agreement that he expects to get. Mr. Speaker, in exchange for $1 trillion of job losses in Canada, will he at least get an end to the U.S. auto tariffs that are killing jobs for our workers in Ontario?
As the president said yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada is a tough negotiator. We will get it.
Give me $1 trillion and even I will say something nice about this. I think we're beginning to see how it is that the president has been able to bulldoze over this prime minister. He won't even stand up when he is confronted by the Americans.
The third thing you need to know is not only was there not a deal in general, but specifically auto and lumber was left completely off the table. This is devastating news for every single auto worker. The U.S. has specifically said that there will be no deal that allows Canadian cars to be sold in the United States. Now that he doesn't need your votes, he kneels there like a pylon as the president skates circles around him, laughing and joking. Carney's smiling and winking as Donald Trump again makes jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state. He sits there and just takes it over and over again and actually seems to enjoy it.
Watch the part again if you didn't get it. A little bit of a joke.
Donald Trump is killing Canadian jobs and making jokes about annexation, and Marc Carney just sits there and laughs along with him.
You are a transformative president.
That's a hell of a compliment. But the ultimate conclusion to this trip is it all makes sense now. It is now abundantly clear why Donald Trump specifically wanted Marc Carney to be prime minister, because Donald Trump gets whatever he wants with Carney in power. Marc Carney is keeping all the Trudeau-era policies that force Canadians to sell our energy at a discount, subsidizing the U.S. He's keeping in all the high-tax regime that makes investors choose the U.S. instead of Canada. And he specifically promised Donald Trump $1 trillion more of investment. No wonder they get along so well together. Marc Carney got what he wanted, Donald Trump endorsed him, and he won the election. And Donald Trump is getting what he wanted, $1 trillion of Canadian investment, putting Americans to work. You know, we started this off with a little bit of a joke about Marc Carney gushing over Donald Trump, but none of this is actually funny. Canadians are losing their jobs. That's so many people sitting around the dinner table not knowing how they're going to make their mortgage payment. It's dreams shattered and businesses going bankrupt. We need a conservative government that's going to fight for Canada. It's going to fight to get those investment dollars flowing to Canada to put Canadians to work. Saying there is no business case.
Would you like to see, if I could ask you bluntly, Canada export more LNG to Europe?
We would really like Canada to export more LNG to Europe, yes.
No business case. No business case when customers are literally beating down your door, begging you to sell them what you have. This would be like a restaurant owner telling a whole bunch of people lined up for lunch, there's no business case for lunch. Now, clearly, no one told the Americans that there is no business case for LNG. In the last few months alone, the United States has signed over $750 billion worth of LNG deals with stable democratic economies around the world.
I'm also pleased to announce that Japan will soon begin importing historic new shipments of clean American liquefied natural gas in record numbers. It'll be record numbers.
Canada could have done that. Justin Trudeau stacked the deck against big energy projects. He brought in all kinds of new laws, including Bill C-69, that designed the approvals process to get to a no. My result? Well, we all remember. Energy East, abandoned. Tech Frontier Mine, abandoned. Northern Gateway, veto. Trudeau didn't just, as some polite economists observe, oversee the departure of billions of dollars of investments in Canada's energy sector. He called those investments a cab, threw them into the backseat, gave the driver 100 and said, get him out of here. But seriously, each one of those project cancellations didn't just represent a drop in GDP or mutual funds not performing as well as they could have. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians lost their jobs, businesses went bankrupt, families were torn apart, and Canadians have to suffer with a lower quality of life because of all of that. Enter Marc Carney, Justin Trudeau's most trusted economic advisor.
It is great to be here.
So basically what's happened here is Justin Trudeau stacked the deck, gamed the system, put in all kinds of burdens and hurdles designed to block big energy projects. And what Marc Carney's done is he hasn't gotten rid of all those awful rules and regulations. He's just given himself the power to decide who has to jump through those obstacles. Marc Carney brought in legislation to give him the power to decide which projects can just ignore the process that Justin Trudeau imposed on them. He's literally written into law the power to add projects to a list that are exempted from all kinds of other federal statutes and regulations. This is exactly what happens in countries run by dictatorships like Russia, where powerful politicians can just decide to ignore rules to benefit favored companies. That is the essence of the corruption that goes on in Russia. Big, powerful oligarchs bribe officials to get their projects approved. They make money by selling the product, but only after getting a sweetheart deal from the government. This is bad for so many reasons. Not only does it expose Canada's political system to the possibility of corruption on a massive scale, because remember, we're talking about multi-billion-dollar projects, but it also completely changes the nature of how our economy works. You see, up until this Liberal government, any energy company could propose a project. As long as they could raise the cash for it themselves and go through the reasonable approvals process and come out the other side with a yes, they could go ahead. What Marc Carney's done now, though, is he's telling every single energy company, every single big project proponent, no, unless he picks you.
What we're going to do is fast-track the approval, truly fast-track the approval of those projects, and we are going to name specific projects to which these fast-track approvals apply. In effect, we're going to have a competition with projects.
This is like a horse race where Justin Trudeau came along and mandated that all the horses had to run in concrete horseshoes, and they all had to carry heavy bags of weight, and jockeys had to be over 6 feet tall. And then Marc Carney comes along and says, yes, all these other horses have to comply with all those rules, but he gets to pick which one gets to run with normal horseshoes with no extra weight and a good old-fashioned 4'11" jockey. Guess which one's going to win? The same is true for our economy.
The only thing we can do now is hope that the rest of Canada, the people that actually voted these morons in, wake up and realize that they made a huge mistake. We need to hope for that. Now let's look at the facts. We don't have a deal with Trump. China's crushing our agricultural industry, and it just gets worse every day. On top of that, the immigration situation is out of control, and don't even get me started on crime. The Carney government made it pretty clear that they side with pedophiles, sex offenders, and terrorists. Why do I say that? They refuse to fix the broken bail system. Women are scared in this country. They're afraid to leave their houses, never mind walk down the street and go to work. We're becoming a third world country faster and faster every single day. But there's still a light at the end of the tunnel, and I want you to remember that. We will get Poilievre in office. Look at it like this. CBC has turned on Carney. CTV has turned on Carney. Chrystia Freeland and other Liberal MPs are really unhappy with Carney. Chrystia Freeland left, and others will be going soon, according to the reports that I've read. On top of that, Carney's own budget officer turned on him, went on live TV, and told Canadians that he's a complete moron. Carney is literally free-falling in the polls, while Poilievre gets more and more popular every single minute of every day.
The independent parliamentary budget officer, Parliament's budget watchdog, came out with shocking numbers today. Marc Carney's deficit will be $68 billion. During the campaign, when he needed your vote, he promised, he put in the Liberal platform, made a written commitment that the deficit would never go higher than $63 billion. Well, he's blown past that promise.
It should be very alarming, stupefying, shocking. It's not a funny fiscal outlook. It's a really serious fiscal outlook. And we don't lightly use the word unsustainable, right? Unsustainable means you don't have the option of saying, maybe I'll wait a couple of years, I'll see how things go. It means if you don't change, this is done.
$4 million spent on nuclear regulatory infrastructure development program in Indo-Pacific region. We're getting pretty dumb here. This one doesn't have hardly any information. It says this project funds the International Atomic Energy Agency to establish and strengthen national regulatory infrastructure for nuclear safety and radiation safety in 28 countries in Indo-Pacific region. Why? Why would we spend our money on that? $10 million nearly? There's no good reason to spend our money on this. The expected outcomes of this project include strength and effectiveness of beneficiary countries to safely manage radioactive materials throughout their lifespan. Why are we on the hook paying these countries to teach them how to do this stuff? Do they even have nuclear facilities? They shouldn't have those facilities if they don't even know how to manage them. So what's going on here? This is just absolute nonsense we see here. Practically every entry on this website is ridiculous nonsense.
Now remember when Carney promised Canadians that boycotting U.S. alcohol would send a message to Washington? Message received. It bounced back hard. Shelves are now overflowing with the same American booze they proudly refused to sell months ago, slapped with massive discount. Marc Carney's call to boycott American spirits, remember that gem of an idea? U.S. liquor stores flying off Canadian shelves it's happening faster than ever. Bars, restaurants, everyday consumers are ignoring Carney's virtue signaling and buying American anyway. Trump's America First economy is winning again, and Canada is losing again. It was supposed to be Carney's moment. Bad choice, but it was supposed to be his moment where he could show that we can stand up to U.S. trade dominance. Well, that is not true. That is a lie. You failed horribly. So now what are you going to do? You're watching a government unravel in real time. They can't backtrack without looking weak, and they can't move forward without losing more money. Provinces like New Brunswick are trying to dump their stock quietly, while others like Nova Scotia are too embarrassed to even open their warehouses. That's not a good thing. That is surrender. Canadians were told this boycott would protect local producers. Did it? It destroyed market confidence is what it did. It hurt small businesses is what it did. It crushed the ability to rely on a steady supply chain, and now the same politicians are acting like heroes for trying to get their money back? That is pathetic. Trump's administration hasn't had to do anything. Canada's leaders are defeating themselves. At the end of the day, this isn't about alcohol, it's about credibility. Marc Carney has none. He tried to play the global game of hardball, and he struck out, humiliatingly. So now MB Liquor is trying to unload $3.4 million worth of American alcohol, the same stock they yanked off the shelf just a few months ago to make a political statement. Remember that? That was supposed to be Canada's bold response, like, yeah, screw you, Trump. Well, you just screwed yourself over really quick. Fast forward to now, and look at that. All those patriotic speeches is turned into clearance sales, flooding your shelves, and people are going like, I just want a Crown Royal. I'm going to buy it. Who cares? It's like, well, that's pretty humiliating if you are a pro-Carney guy. Like, they're begging people to buy the very stuff they once said it was unacceptable. And while Canadian officials scramble to move unsold stock, the American economy just keeps humming along, doing great. Trump's America First policy is not just working, it's thriving. Factories are reopening, exports are up, and the US dollar value is increasing. He's mopping up this really nasty puddle of his own making, and everybody's watching him do it. Now, across provinces, chaos is spreading. New Brunswick's liquor board, they had to admit defeat first, unloading millions in U.S. alcohol at the Salisbury Depot store for cheap. Meanwhile, Nova Scotia, $14 million worth of American booze rotting in storage because they don't even know what to do with it. Taxpayers are footing the bill for this disaster, by the way, for storage, for spoilage, and now for markdowns. That's your money funding Carney's failed Pride Parade.
Some provinces like Nova Scotia are just leaving it in storage. Other ones are attempting to get it back through various means, meaning that they can send it back to the distributor. Others are not able to do that, so they're just holding on to it. And others are similar to New Brunswick, are nearly liquidating.
We've got a story of a power company in Powell River, British Columbia. They've been selling their power to the United States. There used to be a mill there in 2021. The mill shut down, so they've been selling their power to the United States. But now the bigger company that owns the smaller power company wants to lock in a 30-year deal selling power to the United States. That's not a good move for Canada.
And residents on the Sunshine Coast say they're again sending all the power from a local dam to the U.S. for 30 years. Powell River Energy has applied to Canada's energy regulator to approve that deal. And Marie Seidler has been on this story. So Marie, what do we know about this application?
Now that company, as they keep calling it, that company is Brookfield Renewable. Of course it is. Of course. Anything that doesn't benefit Canada is Brookfield. Move more headquarters, move more companies, move more money. Brookfield. This company and the people involved, it's unbelievable. It really is.
How do we know over a 30-year time span when we're going to need that power? And this locks it in for 30 years. There's no wiggle room here. The company will have the right to export for 30 till 2055. That's pretty devastating.
We got to think about this for a second. So Brookfield wants to export electricity out of Canada when they're trying to push an EV mandate on us. We don't have enough electricity to power all the EVs that we're supposed to be buying that they're trying to mandating us to buy. This makes no sense. Are they trying to jack up the price of electricity? Like, what are they doing here? There's too many moving pieces here to try to figure out what's going on. Liberals trying to force EVs on us. The electrical grid can't even support it, and they're trying to sell the electricity for 30 years to America. You can't make this stuff.